There's a reason the most powerful individuals in history, the ones who seem to move in silence, often say the least, but do the most. They understand something that the majority overlooks. Silence isn't the absence of thought, it's the container of power. And once you learn to live in this silence, once you begin to understand the force behind it, your life starts to transform. Not slowly, not subtly, but deeply. We live in a world of noise. Social media has conditioned us to react instantly. Notifications pull us in every direction. Everyone has an opinion, and more dangerously, everyone feels compelled to share it. But here's the real question. In all this noise, where is your power? Bob Proctor once said, most people are extras in their own movie. Why? Because they're so consumed with reacting, with responding, with being seen and heard, that they forget to direct their own lives. When you speak too soon, too often, or without alignment to your vision, you lose the clarity that silence provides. Staying silent isn't about being passive. It's not about weakness or submission. It's about mastering control of your energy, your focus, your response. It's about understanding the value of observation before declaration. Think about this. How many times have you revealed your goals prematurely? You told a friend, a coworker, maybe even a stranger about your big plans, and for a moment, it felt good. You got the dopamine hit, you felt validated, but did you notice what happened after suddenly the fire began to fade? That motivation, that secret drive, lost G, it's 8. Why? Because when you speak your intentions too soon, especially to those who don't share your vision, you disperse your energy. The silence you once had, the sacred space of incubation, is gone. Bob Proctor taught that discipline is giving yourself a command and following it. But silence is what gives birth to that discipline. In silence, your ideas have room to breathe. In silence, your intuition sharpens. In silence, your inner voice is the one you ignore when you're constantly surrounded by chatter becomes your guide. There's a story about an ancient warrior who was revered not for his battles, but for his restraint. In the face of conflict, I would wait. While others shouted, he would observe. When accused, he would listen. When challenged, he would reflect. And when he finally spoke, every word carried weight. Not because his voice was loud, but because it was rare and rooted in presence. This kind of power is accessible to you. But it begins when you choose silence over performance. When you stop needing to prove, explain, or justify your journey. The world doesn't need your constant updates. What it needs is your transformation end that happens quietly, in private, in the dark. This is where faith comes in. And not just spiritual faith, but the kind of faith that doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to convince. Bob Proctor emphasized over and over again, faith and fear both demand you believe in something you cannot see. You choose. Silence is the ground where faith grows. It's where you plant your dreams and trust they'll rise, even when no one else sees them. Let's be honest. Silence is uncomfortable for most people. It's in silence that your thoughts get loud, that your doubts creep in, that your fears knock on the door. But this isn't a flaw, it's an invitation. Because when you face yourself in silence, you become unshakable in the noise. That's the difference between those who move with impact and those who just move. The former cultivate stillness. They sit in silence until they hear the whisper beneath the noise, until their direction becomes undeniable, until their actions are not reactions but revelations. So ask yourself, when was the last time you sat in silence without reaching for your phone? When was the last time you didn't share your plan but executed it anyway? When was the last time you let your results speak louder than your words? We have been conditioned to believe that expression is power, that if you're not visible, you're irrelevant. But visibility without direction is just noise. True power is presence. It's the kind of presence that makes people lean in when you finally speak, because they know you don't waste words. They know you've been listening, observing, becoming, and here's something else to consider. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. When you talk too much, when you overexpose your intentions, you invite projections, opinions, resistance, and while you can't control how others respond, you can control what you share and when. Bob Proctor often warned about this subtle danger. He said, don't go to everyone with your problems. Go to the people who can help. But this doesn't just apply to problems, it applies to vision. Protect your vision the way a mother protects her unborn child. It's not ready for the world yet. It needs nurturing, silence, time. There's a sacredness in not revealing your next move, in keeping certain things to yourself. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because you know it's coming. Because you believe in what you're building. This is the mindset of someone who's not playing games. Someone who's not interested in validation, but in victory. Someone who doesn't need applause because they're too focused on becoming. And here's the irony. The less you say, the more they wonder. The less you share, the more powerful you become. Because in a world of constant noise, silence becomes magnetic. There's something deeply unsettling in, yet empowering about choosing silence when everything around you demands noise. It goes against the grain, against the modern urge to explain, defend, announce. But that's precisely why it holds such force. Silence, when used with intention, becomes a discipline. And that discipline becomes your edge. When Bob Proctor spoke about paradigms, he wasn't just referring to habits or routines. He was speaking of deeply embedded mental programs, automatic behaviors that run beneath the surface. One of the most pervasive paradigms today is this: if I'm not seen, I'm not progressing. But this is a lie. In fact, most of your deepest growth will happen in complete silence off the stage, outside the spotlight, with no audience in sight. Why? Because silence strips away the performance. It leaves only the work, the truth, the real. When you decide to stay silent, especially in moments where the world expects a reaction, you're making a powerful statement not to others, but to yourself. You're saying, I trust my path. I trust my timing. I don't need permission to evolve. And that is rare. There's an almost mystical transformation that occurs in this space. You begin to see more, hear more, feel more, because you're no longer distracted by the compulsion to speak. You'll learn to observe patterns in people, in environments, in your own emotions. Silence sharpens perception. And perception, as Bob Proctor always insisted, is one of the highest mental faculties you can develop. Most people go through life reacting, not perceiving. They speak before they understand. They defend before they reflect. But those who master the art of silence learn to listen beyond words. They listen to energy, to tension, to truth. And with that insight, they move differently strategically, precisely. Let's take this deeper. One of the most damaging ways people lose their power is by oversharing their pain. Not because vulnerability is bad, it's not. But because pain, when prematurely shared, often gets diluted by opinions. And worse, it gets anchored in identity. Instead of healing in silence, people rehearse their wounds in public, and this keeps them stuck. Bob Proctor said, "You are the only problem you will ever have, and you are the only solution." That doesn't mean you must suffer alone, but it means you must first seek inner alignment before seeking external validation. And that alignment always starts in silence. Now, let's talk about goals. Most people fail not because they lack vision, but because they broadcast it too soon. There's this need to declare, I'm going to do this, or watch what I'm about to become. But the moment you do that, something subtle shifts. You invite judgment, you invite doubt, and often you give yourself a false sense of completion. Your mind registers the social reward and stops short of the... Keeping your goals to yourself isn't secrecy. It's strategy. It's guarding your seed until the roots are strong enough to hold. And silence is the soil in which those roots grow. There's an old saying, lions den to need to hua. Everyone already knows who they are. That's the energy we're talking about. Silent confidence, the kind that doesn't seek attention because it's too busy doing the work, and when the results arrive, they speak for themselves. This kind of silence demands maturity. It's easy to talk, easy to defend, easy to perform, but to sit with your thoughts, to hold your intentions quietly, and to walk forward with quiet consistency that takes strength. Think about the people who have truly impacted your life, the mentors, the leaders, the creators. They probably weren't the loudest. They didn't need to be, because their energy backed by inner clarity did all the talking. Bob Proctor often emphasized the law of vibration, that everything, including your thoughts, emotions, and words, carries a frequency. Silence, then, isn't neutral. It's a high-frequency state when it's grounded in self. It radiates calm, confidence, and clarity. And people feel it even if they can't explain it. Let's be real choosing. silence can be lonely. It separates you from the crowd. It removes you from small talk, shallow validation, temporary comfort. But in that loneliness, something else grows. Presence, the kind of presence that makes you magnetic without effort, that draws the right people, the right opportunities, the right moments without chasing. You begin to notice how much energy you save when you stop explaining yourself, how much peace you create when you don't argue every point, how much focus you gain when you protect your mind from unnecessary noise. This is the ROI of silence. It gives back more than it takes. And in a practical sense, silence teaches you patience. When you don't immediately respond, you give yourself a moment to choose to calibrate. You're no longer impulsive. You're intentional. And in that intention, you become powerful. Bob Proctor reminded us often, you're either living by design or by default. And silence is what allows you to shift into design. It gives you the space to ask, what am I creating? Why am I doing this? Is this truly mine, or am I echoing someone else's dream? These questions don't show up in chaos. They arrive in silence. So as the world grows louder, your silence becomes more radical. And that's not a retreat, it's a return. A return to who you are before the noise. A return to your intuition. A return to your purpose. That's the paradox of silence. It seems passive, but it's the foundation of action. It seems empty, but it's full of potential. It seems invisible, but it shapes everything visible. So now, ask yourself, what conversations am I having just to feel seen? What plans am I revealing just to feel significant? What silence am I avoiding because it reveals too much? These questions aren't easy, but they're necessary. Because when you master silence, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, you become unstoppable not because you're shouting, but because you're sure. The world rewards the loud, but it remembers the intentional. That's the distinction most people miss. Loudness can get attention. Yes, but attention without substance fades. The ones who make a lasting impact don't just show up. They shift the energy of the room without saying a word. That's the power. Silence gives you IT, makes your presence speak louder than your voice ever could. And make no mistake, this isn't about being mysterious for the sake of image. It's about choosing what is worth your voice and what is not. Silence isn't empty, it's full of decisions, full of discernment, full of self-respect. Bob Proctor often reminded us, you were born rich. Not just financially, but spiritually, intellectually, emotionally. But if you constantly leak your power through unnecessary talking, you dilute that richness. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't listen, defend your dream to someone who doubts it, or argue a point that doesn't serve your growth, you're spending energy that should have been invested in your becoming. There's an art to restraint. It's a language only a few are fluent in, because it requires you to be rooted in your truth even when no one else validates it. Silence, in this sense, becomes a shield. It protects your frequency from being pulled into the chaos of other people's projections. Let's be honest, people will try to pull you out of your silence, not always maliciously, but out of discomfort. Your silence reflects what they're unwilling to face in themselves. Your peace becomes a mirror they don't want to look into. And so they provoke, they poke, they ask questions that demand answers not because they care, but because they need noise to feel secure. Don't fall for it. You owe no one an explanation for your evolution. Growth doesn't always come with commentary. Sometimes it's just a quiet, relentless commitment to doing the inner work day after day while the world stays busy watching the surface. Think about a seed. Before it becomes anything recognizable, it sits buried in darkness. It doesn't announce its potential. It doesn't scream, "Watch me grow." It just does the work quietly, persistently, faithfully. That's what silence offers you, the conditions for authentic transformation. And here's the thing, when you become comfortable with silence, you also become highly selective with speech. You stop speaking to fill space. You stop answering questions that don't deserve answers. You stop offering opinions that were never invited because you realize your words are tools, not toys. Bob Proctor often emphasized the power of words. He said, words are the clothes that thoughts wear. So when you choose silence, you're not withholding truth, you're tailoring your thoughts until they're ready to be worn with precision, until they carry weight, until they align with who you are becoming, not who you've been. Most people speak from memory. They repeat old patterns, old narratives, old limitations. But those who dwell in silence begin to speak from vision. Their words don't describe the past, they shape the future. This is why silence becomes dangerous to the status quo. It breaks the cycle of repetition. It disrupts the narrative of reaction. It forces a new standard to emerge, not through volume, but through vibration. Let's take this even further. There's a kind of silence that heals. It's not just about being quiet, it's about going inward, listening deeply to the parts of you that don't speak in language. The inner child, the unconscious beliefs, the unprocessed grief. These parts of you won't heal through conversations. They heal through presence, through sitting with discomfort, through being honest with yourself in a way words can't touch. And when you learn to hold space for yourself like this, you stop demanding others do it for you. You stop chasing understanding from people who were never meant to hold your depth. You stop pleading for connection in places that only offer distraction. That's what silence gives you. It gives you undistorted, unfiltered, unmasked. And from that place, when you finally do speak, it's powerful because it's clean, because it's chosen, because it's no longer about being heard, it's about being true. Bob Proctor spoke frequently about self-image, the inner thermostat of your entire life. He taught that you'll never outperform yourself. But how do you change that image? Not just by affirmations or repetition, but by going into silence and confronting what you truly believe about yourself. That's where the real shift happens. In silence, there are no masks, no performances, no audiences to please, just the raw material of who you are and who you're becoming. And in that space, you begin to build a self-image not based on external approval, but internal truth. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's liberating. Because once you reclaim yourself in silence, no one can take that version of you away. You're not outsourcing your identity anymore. You're anchoring it. This anchoring makes you unshakable, not rigid, but deeply rooted. So when criticism comes, it doesn't shake you. When doubt surfaces, it doesn't derail you. When others misunderstand your silence, you don't rush to correct them. You just keep becoming. Because, that silence isn't just a strategy, it's a sanctuary. A place where your vision is protected, where your focus is sharpened, where your soul remembers what it came here to do. And eventually, your silence becomes your signal. Not to the many, but to the few who are also walking this path. They'll recognize the quiet fire in your eyes, the still confidence in your movements, the unapologetic depth of your presence. And without needing to say a word, you'll begin to attract what noise never could. When you reach a certain level of awareness, silence isn't a choice, it's a necessity. It becomes a space where you recalibrate, where you realign with your values, and where you start creating from a deeper frequency. In that space, you realize something powerful. Not everything is meant to be shared. Not every thought needs to be spoken, and not every emotion is meant for a public display. There's a reason spiritual teachers, ancient philosophers, and modern visionaries all emphasize solitude, meditation, quietude. It's not a retreat from life, it's a reconnection with it. Bob Proctor often said, you've got to be aware of where you are before you can move to where you want to go. That awareness doesn't come from talking, it comes from stillness, from silence. In the stillness, your true questions emerge. The ones that don't show up in casual conversations. Questions like, am I living from purpose or from programming? Am I speaking from truth or from fear? Am I acting from alignment or from anxiety? These questions are confronting. They shake the foundation. But that's the point. Silence isn't always soft. Sometimes it's surgical. It cuts through illusion. It removes what no longer serves you. It demands that you rise not by shouting louder, but by listening deeper. You begin to understand that clarity isn't something you find, it's something you create. And that creation requires space. Silence gives you that space. This is especially true when you're building something meaningful, whether it's a business, a relationship, a vision, or a new version of yourself. Sharing it too soon can stunt its growth. Not because people are malicious, but because they carry their own limitations. And when you invite too many voices into your sacred space, you start building according to their fears, not your faith. Bob Proctor was crystal clear on this. You've got to be careful who you mix with. You can't hang around with negative people and expect to live a positive life. Sometimes silence is how you draw that boundary. It's how you protect your mental garden. Not everyone deserves access to your process. Some people are only meant to witness your results. And your results will come if you stay focused. Because silence, contrary to popular belief, doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right things without the need to broadcast them. It's quiet execution. It's disciplined consistency. It's private progress. And progress made in silence tends to last long. Why? Because it's not fueled by validation. It's fueled by vision. When you don't need to prove anything to anyone, you can pour everything into the mission. That's how legacies are built, not with noise, but with depth. Eventually, silence becomes your filter. It helps you discern what's essential and what's not, what's true and what's performative, who's for you and who's just curious, and that discernment becomes one of your greatest strengths. When you stay silent, you start noticing who listens without needing answers, who respects your process without demanding details, who supports your journey even when they don't fully understand it. These are the people you build with. The rest, let them stay confused, let them underestimate, let them project. Your job is not to convince. Your job is to continue, and that continuation happens best in silence. Bob Proctor used to say, you don't decide on a goal because it's something you can do. You decide on it because it's something you want. But the world will always try to talk you out of it too. If it's something they've never done, silence is your shield against their smallness. It's what allows you to protect your desire until it becomes a decision. And once it's a decision, it no longer needs to be defended. Now, let's be clear, this isn't about cutting yourself off from others. It's about discerning what deserves your voice, your time, your energy. It's about recognizing the sacredness of your vision and treating it with reverence, not recklessness. The loudest people often have the least direction. The ones who talk the most about success are usually the furthest from it. But those who walk silently, who work relentlessly, who move with intentions, they are the ones building something real. And real doesn't need to be announced. It will reveal itself in time. So if you're in a season of silence, right now, don't rush it. Don't fill it with distractions. Let it work on you. Let it reshape you. Let it challenge the parts of you that still need noise to feel worthy. Sit with that discomfort. Learn from it. Because when you come out of this silence, you won't be the same. You'll be clearer, sharper, stronger. And when you speak, it will matter. Because it's not coming from impulse, it's coming from insight. This is why silence is a weapon, a sanctuary, a tool, a teacher. It humbles you before it empowers you. It strips you before it strengthens you. It quiets your ego before it reveals your essence. Bob Proctor's work, from his teachings on the subconscious mind to the power of decision, all point back to one truth. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world, and your inner world is shaped in the silence, not in the noise, not in the applause, not in the approval, but in the unseen hours, the unshared work, the unspoken decisions. So what do you do now? You guard your vision. You discipline your voice. You choose your audience wisely, and often your best audience is no audience at all. You stay quiet, you stay focused, you stay grounded. And when the time is right, when the roots are deep, when the foundation is strong, you let your actions speak, and they will speak louder than your words ever. If this message stirred something in you, if it made you reflect, question, or feel a deeper truth, then honor that. Take a moment of silence right now. No distractions, no scrolling, just you, your thoughts, and your next move. And when you're ready, subscribe to the channel, not just for content, but for growth, depth, and real transformation. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next, because the most powerful conversations we'll have will begin in silence.